welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar. I am your host as always, and this week I'm afraid I'm the only voice on Heart and Hand because obviously with there being no game because of the international week, we are doing a regular Q&A. What we do is ask some of our listeners over on Patreon, our chief execs, to submit some questions. They do, and I'll do my very best to answer some of them for the next while or so. So I'm afraid if you don't like the sound of my voice, you've done well to get this far actually into this pod, but there's nobody coming along to act as a break, I'm afraid. But we'll get straight into these questions. I'll try and do as many as possible. We'll start, first of all, with one from Graham McGee. Do you think Clement is going to be able to get a tune out of the summer signings? Because in my opinion, it's a hell of an ask. On top of that, will we see Clement back by the board in terms of signings and shifting dead wood? He'll have to try. I mean, it's common sense. He has this squad and he's got to try and function, or rather finesse a winning team out of it. So generally speaking, when managers come in, you'll hear them talk about it's a fresh slate for everyone, a fresh start even, and a clean slate. I'm already mixing my metaphors, but you'll find that maybe players that we thought of as being surplus to requirements might get a chance. Others who we assume are going to be staples might not. Everything is up in the air at the moment. The manager doesn't have any baggage with these players, nor does he have the fact that he paid the money for them. He made the decision the way that Beale had, so he kind of had to justify that by playing them. I think you'll see that. Look, he'll do well because with some of the players have shown absolutely nothing, to the point where maybe counterintuitively you think they just can't be as bad as that. They're professional footballers, and we know who I'm talking about there. The likes of Dessers and Lammers who've been woeful. I mean, really, really, really bad. So you'd imagine he could get a bit of an upturn from them. Will they be good enough long term? That's a completely different question. Also, will he be backed by the board? I would hope that would be the case. You can never say yes, certainly that's guaranteed, because even if the board come out and say, we'll back him, their idea and our idea of what constitutes solid back might be totally different. That has happened plenty over the last 20 years. So I just can't see how someone with his CV and background takes the job if he's been told, look, it's that squad and there's no money. I don't think it's particularly attractive then. You might go, it's a great job, but no touching that, because it is a mess. That's why we're looking yet again for a new manager in October, because what Beale has left is an absolute mess. So I'd imagine that he'll get something out of some of the players, not all of them. Some of them are going to be flops still. There's no getting away from that. And then he'll in January look to get in a couple of players. And in January it might not be guys that are long term. They may be short term fixes. That is understandable, as he looks ahead to the summer and maybe the players he wants for the longer term. But yeah, it's a challenge, and it's one he's going to have to be up for. Richard McCluckey said, with Clement coming in and his assistant also being Belgian, how important is it that the club ensures some Scottish knowledge within his coaching team? Can we afford another Le Guen lack of understanding? No, we can't. And again, you would hope that anybody who arrives in Scotland with the notion, even just for interview, with the notion of, this is bound to be a doddle, needs to have that notion, I think, taken out of them before completing the first interview. So again, that's something that you hope has been passed on through the interview process. I've long argued that we should try and have a bit of a long-term development plan for coaches as well as for players, and that may mean bringing in some of our own, getting them to work with the coaches. That won't always work. I mean, how much can coaches learn if a manager's unsuccessful? But if, and please God let this be the one, that the manager is successful, then there's a chance for them to learn. And I don't mean that they just stay at Rangers as coaches and then maybe assistant manager and then become manager. They may well go out and spread their wings and get experience at other clubs. So I've long been in favour of that. But I do think it's important that you get somebody who comes in and knows the idiosyncrasies of Scottish football. Because it is weird. It is a strange wee league, and it has certain odd things about it. I go back to, I saw Graham Souness at a speakers night one night, and he had Walter Smith, obviously. And after they played that first match against Hibs, he identified a player, and he said, let's look at him, Walter, I want to sign him. And Walter went, nah, you don't. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, what are you basing it on? He said, oh, he was brilliant today. He says, aye, watch him next week when it's not against us. So straight away there's something, everybody plays much harder against us. So I think that having just that little local knowledge, it can't possibly hurt if you get someone who clearly has to fit in the manager's thinking and clearly has to be someone that gets on. But again, that's what you have an interview process for. You bring in a few, and if the manager says, oh, I've clicked with that guy, he thinks the same way I think, personality wise we got on, he's the guy, then yeah, why not? I don't think it's a bad idea. John Smith says, hi David, leaving to one side my devastation that Muscat hasn't got the job, how do you see at this time Philippe Clement doing up to say the January window? Will he have a rough draft of a playing style in use with the League Cup? And do you see him being given some Christmas money to spend the transfer window? Yeah, I do, not a fortune. I don't think January you'll ever see a club in Scotland spend an absolute fortune, but he'll be given some. But yeah, look, he'll have short-term, medium-term and long-term goals. That's what he'll have. And initially the focus will be on the short term, because it has to be, because the club's in a bit of a mess. The team most certainly is in a bit of a mess. So this is where he has to come in and say, right, what can I fix quickly? What's, to use a wanky work term, the low-hanging fruit? What are the simple things I can do to improve it? Then you start to look at the medium term, and then once you've got hopefully a bit of stability, you can start planning for the long term, which is difficult with Rangers because you know what we're like. We're 2 defeats from a crisis. These days we're 1, so it's not even 2. That's went out the window. That it's been accelerated. So yeah, I think it's important that he has, as I say, those short term goals. I think you're not going to see radical. I don't think radical changes to the playing style immediately, because they take time to implement. He's already spoken about that in his interview with RTV, that you'll see things gradually, because it's a bit different to when a manager arrives right at the start of pre-season and has X amount of time with the players and can drill them every single day. That's not the case here. He's got to keep the players fit and moving for all these games, because we're playing every 3 times a week. So he that limits the training time you've got, but you'll still see tweaks and you'll still see elements of his personality, and hopefully we will begin to see signs of that. I think that was probably the problem that Beale had, that the longer he was here, the less signs we saw of a coherent game plan, not more, and that destroyed any trust any supporters had that he might be able to turn it round. Craig Kennedy said the new manager has said in his interview that he needs time to build. We as a fan base are not the most patient of fans. How much time does he get? Probably to about 3:10 on Saturday, I would imagine, Craig. But realistically, there's a difference between in the heat of the moment, things said just after a game, I always feel, when, to be honest, we're all just either raging or really happy or somewhere in between, and it's emotion that's doing the talking. I think a couple of days afterwards, and once reflection has came in, I think most fans are aware of how difficult the job he's in. Doesn't mean he's got an inexhaustible supply of patience, but I do think that there's an understanding among the support that this is a difficult situation. But again, there are still things you need to do during this period. You need to show that you are having a material effect, be it through your personality initially, be it through tweaks around the team, but you've just got to demonstrate a positive influence at the start to let fans get behind you. Stephen Johnson, if you get first question in the new manager's press conference, you can ask anything you want without consequence. What would it be? You haven't brought those genes with you, have you? Would probably be no. It's difficult at these because it's kind of standard questions, standard answers. I just want to know about, look, what's the intention in terms of playing style? What are you going to bring to us on a technical aspect? In a wee bit more detail than perhaps, I just want playing good attacking football. I get that, but how are you going to go about it? Again, though, there's no manager in the world that's going to sit down with any people in the press and spell out his plans, because they just don't, and perhaps understandably so. Stephen L, what kind of jeans go with a Rangers tie? I am of the fundamental belief that jeans and ties, no, just I'm not a fan at all. Proper trousers, suits, those are things for ties. Jeans, I'm a big jeans fan, of course. I'm a middle-aged man, but time and place. But that's them Europeans for you. They've got their own sense of style. Billy Alexander, who in this squad is his type of player we can hopefully get more out of, and what current first team player might go the other way and not fit and be pushed out? I'd like to see a good few pushed out, to be fair. I think you will see that. You never know. Because guys who you just didn't expect sometimes can just click under a new manager. And also some guys who've maybe been feeling on the fringes or didn't feel they were getting much from the previous manager. A new manager comes in and shows them a wee bit of love and, as I say, a fresh start, and they go, oh, and they just respond and they can play to levels that you didn't think possible. If you want a recent example, actually, and I know there was a lot more money involved in the signing, but Joe Linton at Newcastle was a joke. I mean, he was genuinely a joke. And somehow Eddie Howe's turned him into one of the best box-to-box midfielders in the Premier League, and now he doesn't look at a place in a Champions League side. So it can be done. I hope he can do it with a lot of our guys. And there will be guys that I think the manager looks at and says, nah, right, just you're not my type of player. And there's nothing you can do when that happens as a player. If a manager just doesn't fancy you, then it really doesn't matter what he thinks he is a person or whatever. He just won't play you. And in that case, it's better for everyone to move on. Keith Murray says, I hope all the fans can get right behind the manager now, given all the negativity we've endured. I can't see him coming here and not being guaranteed funds to spend, so interesting to see what happens in January. Also curious if we're bringing in a new coaching team. Bringing in a couple, definitely. I think that's clear. He's already brought in Stefan van der Heyden, who was apparently the guy who got in the way of Scott Nisbet's magnificent pile driver against Bruges back in the day. So, yeah, one of these weird quirks of football. Ronnie Gallagher says, just watched the interview on RTV, was impressed with how the manager spoke about his plans. I said in a recent post on Heart and Hand that our team lacked clarity of roles on the pitch and structure. I believe the new manager will bring this in, and doing so will improve quickly, not saying immediately, but it shouldn't take months. Like a couple of Heart and Hand poser, I have been accused of having a Panglossian outlook. Am I way off the mark here with where my head is at and my faith in players showing their qualities? Now we have proven experienced and winning manager who will provide clarity and structure. I agree with you on those two keywords, clarity and structure. We've badly lacked it. Let's be honest, by the end up, Michael Beale had no idea what it was supposed to look like himself, never mind anybody else. And I think in any job, when someone simplifies it for you and says, this is what I need you to do, when a boss does that, they're the bosses that you love working for. When they set out tasks, sometimes challenging tasks, but nonetheless, you say, look, this is what I need you to do. I know you're capable of it. Go and do it. Then I think once you've got those parameters, then it's just easier in your mind. So, look, are you being overly optimistic? There are players in that dressing room that, no, I don't think will improve dramatically. There are guys who I think are coming towards the end of their usefulness. And, that includes guys like the likes of Tav, Goldson, Barisic, etc. They've been there a while, been decent servants to the club in the main, but yeah, and these are something that we'll need to do. Now, you can't do it all for Hibs, but I think you'll begin to see phase changes over the next year or so. Martin Sullivan says, I hope Clement works out and learns from his predecessors' errors. Scottish football isn't complicated, and sooner he realises this the better. We need to stop hyping up games with supposed rivals, the likes of Aberdeen or Hibs, and just go out there and play our game. We need to bring some swagger back to the club. I think this was something that Gerrard did that Beale caught, if you like, which was treating certain matches with a level of overthinking that it didn't need, and sometimes being too focused on it's going to be a battle or whatever. You're absolutely right. The best Rangers teams just go out there and we should have our own definitive way of playing. That's been a problem. We didn't have our own definitive. So things were difficult for us. They did become difficult games because we couldn't say, well, we're just going to play our football because we know it works. It didn't work. And we knew it didn't work. And, the same with Gio, the away performances. We knew the away form was very patchy at best. So, of course, these games did become bigger because the opposition sensed that. They go, they're not sure of themselves. And that's when they can step in and give an extra 10%, and suddenly you're bang up against it. So I think there's a line between underrating it and thinking this is a breeze and overdoing it and complicating it unnecessarily. I think there is an area in between that where you can get it perfectly pitched, where you can, just have the right amount of arrogance, for want of a better term. Not that it becomes complacency, and not that it isn't developed enough that it can sometimes lead to fearful actions. And we've mentioned this before. Go back to the first pod of the season. Things like not rushing to take quick throws away to Kilmarnock because we want to get everybody back in position in case Kilmarnock break on us. That's too little. That shouldn't be in your thinking. You're playing Kilmarnock, no offence, right? But they don't have Mo Salah up front. They're not going to break on you at lightning quick pace. Europe, yes. Parkhead, yes. But it's just things like that. Equally, you don't want the players swaggering into Tynecastle thinking, that's a breeze, man. We just need to show up, because that's not going to work either. So there is a balance to be found. Gordon Miller says, it was encouraging to see Graham Souness was part of the appointment process. Is this something the club should build on to get well-respected ex-players managers into the structure of the club? Bayern Munich do it with good success. To me, it helps maintain the standards we expect at our club. What do you think? If you have resources that you can tap, then you're silly not tapping them. Be that ex-players or for scouting or tips or whatever. It doesn't mean you have to do everything they say, but why wouldn't you? If Graham Souness offers you advice, why wouldn't you listen to it? That's kind of where I am on things like that. And like I say, sometimes you can listen to it and think, well, I think you're wrong, so we're going to go our own way. That's your job as chief exec or chairman or whatever. But yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? If you've got respected figures from the world of football, then I think that, to me, it's just common sense. I would certainly do it. If I was working in an area and someone with tremendous success in that area came up to me and said, hi, is there anything I can help you with? Any questions you might have? I'd be picking the guy's brain. Of course I would. Why wouldn't you? So, yeah, for me, it's certainly something I'd like us to look at. Simon says, I used to be the eternal optimist, merely a flesh wound type of attitude. Then there was the start of this season and I vowed not to get my hopes up until we're on the brink of winning anything. And the eternal optimism can return after we win back-to-back titles. Reading comments across various platforms, I think I might be in the majority. And back-to-back titles, what will it take for you to have that belief we'll dominate Scotland again? I think that's reasonable. I think 2-3 seasons of regular success. We've had 2 trophies in 12 years now. A long part of that, we understand why. But I always think it's fair to go back to 2018 now, right? I do understand the arguments from 2012, but I think it's fair to go back to 2018 now and say, right, well, from there, we've had 2 trophies in 5 years. That ain't good enough, right? Not from where we were. Even then, big job and all that, but 2 trophies, it's not good enough. So, yeah, in terms of thinking we can dominate, you need to run before you need to walk before you can run, even. So, getting in the habit of picking up trophies regularly, because it's something that we don't have at all, and we need to get back into the habit of doing it. If that was a Walter side, the year that we won the league, we would have won the treble, because that was a side that was accustomed to picking up trophies. And when the opportunities came up for them in that, they would have won it, because they had that mentality. And again, that's maybe one of the reasons why I do think there'll need to be changes at the squad. I think there are players in there who don't have that mentality, and they're not going to get it now. It's too late. So you need to bring in people who either have it already, ideally, or if you can't afford those, to bring in people that you can develop it into them. And that'll need to come from the manager. And I like the fact he's won stuff before. I do like that, because it's that knowledge of, I know how to cross a line. I know how to pot that one in ball, throw that one in dart, put that one in putt. Yeah, to go and finish it. I know how to do that. I think that's big, and it's something that I hope he can bring on. David Clapperton, it's summer 2025. What's the absolute minimum achievements from now to then to consider this appointment a success, and does it only constitute trophies? Yes, it does only constitute trophies. I don't care if we're playing phenomenal, wonderful, free-flowing football. If we're winning nothing, then it's as bad as playing choked, constipated shit football. Trophies are what we measure ourselves on at Rangers. Never change. And there's a reason why we're on a third manager here in 2 years, because they didn't deliver to that. So that's why we're here. Rona says, we've been through another rollercoaster ride, but the heart of it again has been reliance on fan media to keep us updated. It's clearly the preferred and trusted media role for many fans. With that in mind, what do you see for the future of fan media in general and Heart and Hand in particular? I don't necessarily think that's 100% true. I think it's some fans prefer it, other fans prefer traditional media. There's people who, and they tell me about it often enough. They like to get in touch, tell me how much they hate fan media. So, to be honest, I mean, it's maybe just me, but I don't particularly like the term, because I think there is an implication in it that you can't be rational and you can't be you can't assess what you're seeing in front of us, whereas we can. Sometimes we're harsher than the papers because we care and they don't. I think just in terms of the future, for me, I don't look too much beyond. We want to continue to make entertaining shows here on our network that people want to listen to. We want to build our community here where people can comment with it being sworn at by people or being called this or that or insulted. I think that, the whole, as I say, Twitter thing with, it's all about engagement and it's all about who can be the angriest. I think, to use a Richard Nixon phrase, there's a silent majority who don't really care for that, but you don't hear from them. So I want to continue to provide a place where you can have a rational debate with someone without it within two messages leading to, right, I've had enough of you, cyber outside. That's what I want. It's maybe really limited. I don't think I'm ever going to rival Sky Telly for media dominance, put it that way. But so long as we continue to provide stuff that people enjoy listening to and stuff that I think is valid in terms of a contribution, i.e. that we're not sitting doing Arsenal fan TV shite of, come look at our pain, so that other opposition fans can come and laugh at us. Because, anyone can do that. That's a doddle. And you'll get hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube as people pass it about laughing at you. We'll never do that either. So That's kind of where I see we are. In terms of stuff, we pass on what the club say, and we tell people that people will say, is that the truth? We never guarantee that. What we say is, this is what the club are saying, and it's then up to you to believe it or not believe it. And we'll give our opinion on things. I think that's really all we can do. Rob Whiteford, David, what and who do you think Clement will change inside the first few weeks? I think that you'll see a bit more urgency about the way that the team play. I can't see any manager coming in and being impressed with the speed at which we move the ball. In all honesty, I think that would be something that any professional coach is going to come in and look at and go, no, right, there's half your problem right there. In fact, it's taken you 4 or 5 touches to move the ball, a square ball 5 yards, and then it takes him 2 or 3 touches, and then he just ends up passing it to you. I think you'll look for people whose movement is a lot better than what we've seen. Too many of our guys are static. So that might mean, incidentally, having to turn to younger people. We're still waiting to hear about Zach Lovelace's injury, although he said he would be back quick. And these youngsters, if they come in, Ross McCausland's another we saw recently, they won't be saviours. They're not going to come in and just be amazing, right, and light the place up. But it's about certain short-term things that the manager needs to do while he's got the squad that he has. So he may take, the likes of a Lovelace or a McCausland and say, right, well, they bring pace and a bit of dynamism, so I'm going to play them while accepting that they'll make mistakes and they're young lads, and the consistency even within games might not be huge, but right now I need this element of their game. So I think you'll start to see things like this. Obviously, his preferred formation. He's tended to play a sort of 4-4-2 in the past, from what we can gather from people in Belgium. But equally, he's also been flexible. So he may look at squad and say, rather than this is my formation, I'm going to fit people into it. I think he's more a manager who'll go, right, what's the best? What can I get out of this squad? How will I do it? So those are the changes I expect to see quickly. Gary B, hi David, do you think given the chance that Clement will build the team from the back? You need a stable back door, but the problem that we have, although our defence drives us nuts at times, and understandably so, the biggest problem that we've had over the past 2 years is we don't score enough goals. And I mentioned this after the Aberdeen game, where we should have been goals, not one, goals ahead by the time Aberdeen conceded. My theory is this, incidentally, that I think some of our supporters don't watch a lot of football other than Rangers, right? It's understandable. You get others, I'm a bit of a nerd about football, I watch a lot of football, but you get others who are quite happy, they watch Rangers, maybe match of the day, maybe the odd English game, maybe the odd Champions League game, right? I think they've become so conditioned to the idea that it takes any football team 8 or 9 great chances to score, because it takes us 8 or 9 great chances before we score. But, if Manchester City have scored 4 goals, they haven't had 40 shots to do it. And obviously, they've got some special players, but they're playing at a higher level. I'd say the same in Scotland. It doesn't take teams. We are nowhere near clinical enough. If you make 8 decent chances in a game, you should be scoring 3 or 4. And that's the difference. So that, for me, is what he needs to focus on initially. I think that's important. Gordon, what are your predictions for the rest of the season? Thought I'd give you an easy one. I'll go cup double and fall into the Conference League in Europe. I'm not going to say predictions because I've no evidence for predictions at the moment. To say we're going to win cups based on what I've watched to this point is ludicrous. It's just faith. This Rangers team aren't consistent enough, anywhere near consistent enough to trust that they're going to be able to do that. I'll say my targets for the season are a cup double and cut the gap on Celtic. Those are my targets for the season. But there'll need to be a drastic improvement from what we've witnessed to have any chance of doing that. Stefan says, hi David, do you think you can continue to curtail excitement when the manager provides a trusted Edgar fantasy formation of 4-4-2 and it duly annihilates Hibs? Look, I know there's all these guys listening to this, and whether enganches and they're trequaristas or all the rest of it, right? And, we like to play a 3-4-3 with inverted midfielders and that. 4-4-2, 4 centre-halves at the back, 1 winger, 1 right-sided midfielder, a massive bastard up front, and a wee nippy bastard next to him who can finish. It's how God intended football to be played. It's what Rangers won the vast majority of our leagues with, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's just science, damn it. But you can play 2-4-4 for all I care if we're winning. I just want to watch some football. It doesn't make me want to scratch my eyes out. David Wiley just watched the new manager's interview and found his comments about us fans getting behind the team in the upcoming matches very interesting. How do all the supporters get behind a group of players old and new that they've consistently let us and other managers down? It's not for them, it's for the manager's sake. This is a very interesting question, and I can't pretend that there's an easy answer to it, because you are spot on. While the manager might be able to give players a clean bill of health and say, right, okay, today is day 1, right, in your Rangers career, it's harder for us, particularly with players who've been there for a number of years. And I think in the case of Goldson and Tavernier and Barisic, guys who have shown signs of slowing down with age, or miles on the clock, or whatever you want to put it, that we know they're not producing what they were once capable of producing. And the question is, can they, in the future, is it just bad form, or is this something more long term? And I think that you're right, there is the scars of previous disappointments there. Christ, if you're a Rangers fan recently, more scar tissue than skin. So I think that we have to try as best we can to do that. What I think would frustrate fans and make that very difficult is if players continue to make the same errors that they've been making this season, and they continue to do the same bad things they've been doing. The slowness of play, the taking too many touches, at which case the manager is, I think, going to have to pull them out the team. And I think you saw that at St Mirren last week with Stephen Davis pulling out Dessers and Lammers, saying, I can't, because he knew that as soon as Lammers did that thing where he turns the guy 4 times and somehow hasn't got past him and the guy just takes the ball off him, or Dessers went offside, that I think there would have been complaints, from the support. So reintegrating those players with better habits is something I think the manager will look to do. But it's a tough one. I won't lie. I won't pretend that when someone does something that drives you nuts and has been driving you nuts for a while, it's going to be very hard to go, unlucky, right, come on, keep it going, because your natural reaction is, of course, to go, oh, for fuck's sake, why'd you do that all the time? So, I know, right, I sat on the gantry at Ibrox, right, in the press area, and I do that at times. Sometimes I need to chew my hand to avoid shouting out at the players' things. So it's not going to be easy. I wish I could say, oh no, well I'll do it. Well, I'll turn up and we'll go, yeah, unlucky. But the reality is the players will need to show us something. And if they do that, then they'll get, I think, the backing. But I think that the performances have been substandard and so substandard for so long so far this season that there comes a point with the argument of, do the players need to lift the fans? Do the fans need to lift the players? I'd probably go more often than not that it's the fans' job in an individual game, and we do that. But I think now it's on the players. They need to show us something. They need to regain our trust, because you start off with the trust, right? People give you that trust. They've lost it. It's up to them to rebuild it and regain it. Ross says, who in your opinion will make up the rest of Clement's coaching staff? I have no idea, to be totally honest with you. So it'll be down to people he knows best, and hopefully we'll see him bring people in soon. I don't think it'll be a huge coaching staff, incidentally. I don't think he works that way, but there is some talk we're hearing about him bringing in a Scottish person. You mentioned in your question Stephen Davis, perhaps. He would be an option, I would imagine. There are names that always get bandied about, McCann, Alex Ray's there, Kevin Thompson, etc. But he will add to it. But initially, I think, as we know, it's him and Stefan van der Heyden. Paul Kerr, between players with scar tissue and managers who give the impression they didn't know how to dish out a good bollocking, I have felt we lose matches in the dressing room. Stronger characters wouldn't let themselves or teammates keep making the same simple mistakes. Do you think the new manager can provide enough of a culture shift on his own, or is it too far gone? I feel the sweeping changes we crave will be difficult for him to put into place without moving on some of the leadership group first. There is no doubt he'll need to make some of those sort of changes, and I think you're right. I think that the evidence is there that there hasn't been a winning mentality in that Rangers dressing room consistently. So therefore, you look at what the constants are in it. And it might not be all of them, by the way. Like for instance, if Tav is still capable of producing for you, so he may well still have a part to play. But yeah, I do agree. I think you need to foster a winning culture. But that's part of the job for a manager. Let's not forget that, fostering a winning culture. Culture is something that's on any manager in any business's job spec. It's up to you to foster a positive one, a winning one, whatever you want to describe it as. So it kind of is on him to do that. Because he'll be judged on that. And if you have people in there that you don't think share that, I've said before, my problem with this Rangers squad is it doesn't hate losing. It doesn't like losing, don't get me wrong, and it would prefer to win, but it doesn't hate losing. It doesn't make them violently sick the way that it did for some of our players in the past. We all know Rangers teams where if we'd played the way we played against Aris, that dressing room would have looked like the inside of the octagon in the UFC, because players would have been, just having a right go at each other about it. I'm not sure they have this mentality. Maybe it's modern football, and I accept maybe I'm out of date, but there's a level of performance that I think embarrasses you as a professional, and that was one of them. That was so bad. That was, I thought it lapsed into unprofessional. So we'll need to hope that the manager can recognise it. Obviously, you don't want them knocking fuck at each other on a daily basis, incidentally. That, given our injury record, Jesus, no. Can you imagine reading that, the team sheet of the weekend? Player A, knee knock, player 2, hamstring, player 3, 3 teeth missing. But there is a balance. Ross McCormick, do you know if there's any truth in the suggestion Clermont's build-up tempo is slower as only relative to Muscat? I think you need to look at the type of leagues that he played in as well. In French football, it's a lot more possession. I always felt, for example, that'd be a league that Glenn Kamara would excel in. I always thought it was a type of league. So, horses for courses, I think it's fair to say on that one. Won't work for us anyway. Moving on, a couple of questions that are similar to ones that have been asked. If the new manager's intent on a 4-4-2 formation, do you think it will benefit players like Cantwell and Raskin, who were performing well together at the end of last season? Raskin seems to have sat in front of our back four more this season in our central three. I think to the detriment of his game. I realise potentially pushing up a wee bit might impact the defence. Yeah, I mean, you have to look at what the players have played in the past, what they've grown up with, what they're comfortable with. If you're asking somebody to do something totally alien, it may be difficult. We'll wait and see, but I think short term you're more likely to see him base his formation on the players as opposed to the players having to fit his formation, as I've mentioned. Keith Kettlewell, guys, how does this manager change what the guys before him couldn't? Time will tell, but I don't think Guardiola could fix the problems caused by the usual suspects. Well, then he has to change the people. If it's the people, he has to identify that problem. That I think is the issue. You can't solve a problem until you identify what it is. And I think that there are plenty of marginal gains you could make, incidentally, that would make us better. Will it make us good enough? Probably not. And then you are going to need better personnel, to come in and do it. But a big part of any clean-up job, and this is a clean-up job, is, right, what went wrong? What caused this? How did it get to this point? Right, okay, are there things I can do differently? Also, I'm not a great believer that a manager can't change anything, can't change everything. And I think that there are things at the club in terms of director of football, for example, that need to be changed, that need to be fixed. I think there are areas within the club that you would look at and say, well, right, that's not working. I don't think youth development's been working, although they did make that change in the summer, so hopefully we'll see a wee bit more out of that over the next year or so. So I think that it's always a kind of joint thing. Transfer business is a big thing. Transfer business, I think, now has been woeful for about 3 years minimum. It hasn't been average and it hasn't been bad. It's been woeful, and that's a big part of where we are. So that's something that you hope the manager, in tandem with a director of football, can get right. I like this from Gordon. He says, does anyone fancy hospitality at the Rangers Aris Limassol match? Tickets are sold in pairs and my pals are too mean to shell out. So Gordon's from Edinburgh. If you want to go to the Aris game in hospitality with them, there you go. Tommy, David, do you think the club worry too much about the feelings of the support and thus make decisions based on social media noise rather than having a clear strategic plan? Or are we just conditioned that the club ignores the support and so it feels weird when they do listen to us? That's a good one. I think there's a difference between being aware and listening. And it can be quite difficult, I think, to get that balance right. And also it depends which fans you're listening to, you know. One of the things that people say to me a lot is, you need to tell them in the press conference this, right? Missing the point of what a press conference is entirely. It's not for anyone in the media to go in and tell them things. It's to ask a question. But you need to, otherwise they won't know. And it's just such an overly simplistic. Of course they know. They live in the world. They don't live in a vacuum. They are aware when people are raging on social media and on forums and on here and on phone-ins and in papers and most of all, when you've been booed off at home 3 times in a row, they know that the situation can't go on. So, you know, the idea that they don't know. Now, does that influence their thinking? Again, that would take leadership and strong leadership to be aware. I don't think any business can be totally unaware of how customers feel. You know, just from a purely commercial, nakedly commercial point of view, you can't totally disregard their thoughts, even if you think they're wrong, because it's the old custom is always right thing. It's the old thing of, look, they might not be right, or I might not agree they're right to feel this way, but they do feel this way, and therefore I've got to try and deal with it. So I think there is a real balance to be struck in that. I think they listen on certain things and they don't listen on others. And a part of that, incidentally, is people have said to me over the years, oh yeah, I was dealing with this staff and he just didn't seem to care. It's human nature, unfortunately. There becomes a point for people who've worked there for years, and anyone who's worked in customer services, by the way, will agree with me on this, that compassion fatigue kicks in. That when everyone you're dealing with is up to high dough, as my mum would put it, constantly, just for your own sanity, you have to go, right, okay, and you've got to try and just get through it. So we put a lot of pressure on the people who work at the club, and I'm not talking about the senior guys. They get paid enough. You can put them under pressure. That's Bisgrove Bennett. It's their job. But we kind of lower people in the club. We also, a guy once said to me, there was an email had come out from Rangers and there was a spelling mistake at the bottom of it, and he said, "How does that happen?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "That's a disgrace. How is that allowed to send out?" I said, do you have a job, mate? He went, "Yeah." I said, "Does anyone ever make a mistake?" And he said, "Well, yeah, of course." There you go then. But we're not keen on them making mistakes. They've got to be perfect all the time. And again, it's not likely to happen. So I think that there is this, kind of balance to be met. See, actually, I can simplify it right down, Tommy. See, when we're winning, life's great. See, when we're not, everybody gets it. And it will never change. So, it's who we are. But yeah, clubs shouldn't be hiring or sacking managers based on what the fans say, with obvious exceptions. For example, I think Lampard, the reaction was so violent. And I'm in a decent place, incidentally, where, yeah, I'm aware of what's been said on social media, but I'm aware of what I said, ordinary, in workplaces and stuff, not just the perma angry people. Lampard, the fans would have shit all over from day one. It wouldn't have worked. So you have to be aware of that, because if he wouldn't have been, even if he'd come in and he totally was the right man for the job, the fans were never going to accept it. We'd have been waiting for him to screw up, and that's not a healthy place, as we've seen the last few weeks with Michael Beale. It's not a healthy place, because we were just waiting on him fucking up. It's why he should have went, I said it on here, after the Celtic game. I said seconds after the final whistle, he'll limp on for a bit, but he shouldn't. He should just go now, because I knew, and every one of the supporters knew, next defeat he is toast, and we should have just done it then and been further ahead. But anyway, Alan says, Heart and Hand spoke to Belgian-based journalist about Clement. Did anyone speak to any Monaco ones? They're saying that he had a win rate but lost all big games, no system, just relied on a bit of magic from someone. Monaco fans are making him sound like Beale, to be honest. No, we didn't speak to anyone from Monaco about him. We spoke to someone from Belgium. You need to remember that at the time we were just compiling scout reports on each of the candidates, and there were 5 or 6 at the time. So we didn't do a full, recruitment check of their background. It's a legitimate gripe, in the same way that I think if the reason he is on the market is that he was sacked at Monaco. So it is a legitimate gripe. But, again, time will tell. Will he prove his worth? Or will he prove to be, just what we don't need? And if that's the case, then that falls on the people who recruited him. 100% it does. I do think we have a tendency in the UK to judge a manager on a spell rather than a career, or rather than on his talent, incidentally. And in Italy, they're much better. There's a great book, Gianluca Vialli, the late Gianluca Vialli, wrote with Gabriel Marcotti, the football journalist, in which he discussed the differences between Italian and English football. And he said an interesting thing. He says, if you fail in a job in England, like a big job, that's you done. You're not getting back. right? Not for years anyway, because people say, he failed, he's a dud. So whereas in Italy, we've seen this, haven't we? You know, Allegri, who was at Milan, gets sacked, turns up at Juve. In Britain, we go, what are they hiring him for? And yet he won titles with them. That's a different mentality. And we in the UK tend to judge on spells rather than overall. However, sometimes, unfortunately, that can be right. So there's a problem. And yeah, it depends. Do we get the Clement that they're unhappy with, or do we get the one that people raved about in Belgium? Hopefully it's the latter rather than the former. But at the moment, it's all just conjecture. He has a job, and the only thing that's going to prove him to be a success or a failure is time. So we're about to go on another leg of the journey, folks. Hopefully it's a lot more fun to travel than it's been for a while. And hopefully you'll be here with us here on Heart and Hand to talk about it. Thank you very, very much for listening to us here on Heart and Hand. If you want to come and see Heart and Hand live, and please do, come to see us on December the 1st at New Edmiston House. We're almost sold out on that one. I'm just trying to flog the last few tickets so I can boast that it's a sellout again. So if you want to come along, tickets are £20, including booking fee, and you can get them from the Edmiston House website. You can come and listen to us at Patreon on Heart and Hand. And if you want to keep up to date with all that's going to be happening in the managerial world of Philippe Clement over the next few months, it's the best place to be. Right, thank you for listening to me. My thanks to our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. I'll talk to you again on here next week after we've taken on Hibs. Till then, take care everybody. Bye-bye.